Right. So today we're going to be doing a deep dive into something super important for your IELTS speaking score.
Definitely important.
Accent clarity.
Mm-hmm.
But,
right.
We're not talking about getting rid of your accent completely.
Oh, absolutely not.
Right. Because your accent is part of you.
It's part of your identity.
It's part of your background.
Exactly.
But we are talking about making sure that you can be understood easily by the examiner.
Yeah, because you spent so much time, working on your vocabulary.
Yeah.
And your grammar.
All that good stuff.
You don't want your accent to
hold you back.
To hold you back, exactly.
So we're going to unpack
yes.
A really interesting conversation between
Yes.
an IELTS expert named Maria and a student named Alex.
Yeah.
From the 37th IELTS high score.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got some really good advice for us.
Yeah.
So
to get into it.
I guess to set the stage.
Yeah.
Why is accent clarity such a big deal for the IELTS speaking test?
So it's a big deal because the examiners are assessing your pronunciation.
Okay.
And that includes, things like word stress and intonation and how you link words together.
Right.
And if you have a very strong accent, it can sometimes be difficult for the examiner to understand you. And so that will affect your score, even if you have great ideas.
So it's almost like,
yeah,
when you're giving a presentation online and you have a technical difficulty. And so your ideas might be amazing.
Exactly.
But no one can hear you.
Nobody can hear you.
Like it's glitching out or something.
Yeah, it's like a barrier to communication.
Right.
And that's what a strong accent can be sometimes as well.
Makes sense. Okay, so the first thing that Maria talks about is this idea of active listening.
Active listening.
And she says this is really important.
It is.
For improving accent clarity.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people listening are probably like, well, I listen to English podcasts all the time.
Yeah, that's what I thought too when she first said it.
Right.
But active listening is a little bit different.
So it's not just having it on in the background while you're making dinner.
It's not background noise.
Yeah.
You really have to be actively paying attention.
Gotcha.
And she had a really good point. She said, imagine that you walk into the IELTS exam room.
Okay.
And the examiner has an accent you've never heard before.
Okay.
If you haven't trained your ears to understand different accents, it might throw you off.
Right. So you got to kind of prep your ears.
Prep your ears, exactly. For anything, you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah. Okay. So she specifically recommends
she does
BBC podcasts.
Yep.
And TED Talks. Because those tend to have
a variety of standard English accents.
Okay, so that's a good starting point.
Yeah, and like we were saying, it's not just about listening passively.
Right.
You really want to actively analyze what you're hearing.
So like taking notes or...
Yeah. You don't necessarily need to take notes, but just pay attention. Like really notice how they're stressing certain words where they pause, how they connect sounds together.
Okay.
It's almost like you're learning a new language within the language.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next tip that she gives, which actually takes us a step further, is called a shadowing.
Shadowing.
And this is...
So this one's interesting.
Yeah, tell me about this.
So basically what you do is you listen to a short phrase or a sentence from one of these podcasts or TED Talks.
Okay.
You pause it, and then you try to imitate the speaker as closely as possible.
Wow.
Yeah. You try to copy their intonation, their rhythm, even like the way they're shaping their mouth.
So it's not just about getting the words right.
Yeah.
It's about like...
It's about the musicality of the language.
Yeah, the musicality of the speech.
Yeah. So it's like a vocal workout.
Yeah.
You're training your mouth muscles to make the right sounds.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes... I think when we hear about accent reduction, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. Like you're trying to become a completely different person.
Yeah.
But thinking of it as like a vocal workout makes it seem a lot more approachable.
More manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just practicing.
Okay, so you've got active listening and you've got shadowing.
Yep.
And those are both about kind of tuning your ear.
Yeah, training your ear and your mouth to the nuances of English pronunciation.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. But what about those sounds that are just notoriously difficult for non-native speakers? I'm thinking of things like...
What's the R sound?
The R in world.
Yeah.
Or the TH in three.
Those are tough.
Yeah.
Those are tough.
So how do we work on those?
Well, Maria has some good advice for that too.
Okay, good.
So she says, record yourself saying those words and then compare your pronunciation to a native speaker's pronunciation. So you can actually hear the difference.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's like holding up a mirror to your pronunciation.
I can imagine That's really humbling.
It can be.
Because it's so easy to think you're saying something perfectly.
You think you sound perfect.
And then you hear the recording. Yeah. And you're like, oh, no.
And you're like, whoa, that's not what I thought I sounded like.
So once you've identified those sounds that you're struggling with.
We can really focus your practice
on
those specific areas.
But how do we even know how to make those sounds?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Right.
Like, how do we actually correct them?
Right, because maybe we don't even know what we're doing wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Maria recommends looking at the International Phonetic Alphabet Chart.
The ITA.
The IPA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw that, I was intimidated.
It is intimidating.
Yeah.
But it's actually really helpful.
Okay.
Once you get the hang of it.
Okay.
So think of it like a map. That shows you exactly where to put your tongue, your teeth, your lips to make those tricky sounds.
So it's like a code.
It's like a code, yeah.
For pronunciation.
Yeah, it's like unlocking the secrets of English pronunciation.
Awesome. And I know that there are also some apps.
There are?
That can help with this too?
Yeah. For those of you who are more tech savvy, Maria mentioned LSA Speak and Youglish.
Okay.
And they give you like real-time feedback on your pronunciation.
So it's like having a little pronunciation coach in your pocket.
Right in your pocket. Okay, so we've talked about active listening. We've talked about shadowing.
Yep.
We've talked about working on those individual sounds. But now let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the overall flow and rhythm of English.
That's important.
Because that's a big part of sounding.
Natural and confident.
Right. So how do we work on that?
Let's dive into those tips after a quick break.
Sounds good. All right. One of the big things about English is that it's what's called a stress-timed language. And that basically means that we emphasize certain words in a sentence.
Gotcha.
And usually those words are the ones that carry the most meaning, like nouns, verbs, adjectives.
Okay.
And then other words kind of get reduced.
So it's not just about pronouncing every word correctly. It's about
the rhythm of the sentence.
The rhythm of the sentence, okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm stressing every single word,
it's going to sound a bit robotic.
Yeah, robotic. It's not going to sound natural.
Not going to sound natural.
Yeah.
Maria gives this really good example. She says, I'm going to the market.
Right.
You hear how those stressed words kind of pop?
Yeah.
But if you said, I am going to the market.
That sounds weird.
It sounds a little unnatural, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that when you master this kind of stress-timed rhythm, it not only makes you sound more natural, it can actually make you easier to understand.
Because the listener can pick out those key words.
Exactly. They're like signposts.
Right.
They guide the listener through what you're saying.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And then Maria suggests a really fun way to practice this.
Okay, let's hear it.
Tongue twisters.
Tongue twisters.
Tongue twisters.
Okay, but so do IELTS examiners really care? If I can say, she sells seashells by the seashore, like super fast.
I mean, they probably don't care if you can say it super fast.
Right.
But the point of tongue twisters is not just about speed.
Okay.
It's really about training the muscles in your mouth.
So it's like a workout for your mouth.
It's like a workout for your mouth.
Yeah.
So you know the examiner's listening for how clearly you can articulate each sound, even in these difficult combinations.
Yeah.
So the more you practice tongue twisters, the more agile your tongue will be.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. And then she talks about linking and connected speech.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really tricky, I think.
It does. So basically, in spoken English, we tend to connect words together.
Right.
We sometimes drop sounds. We connect other sounds.
Yeah, it sounds like a totally different language sometimes.
It does.
Right.
It does.
Okay, so give me an example.
So like instead of saying, I have to go, we would say, I have to go.
Right.
Or going to becomes going, want to becomes want.
Okay, I have to admit, I always felt a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Using those contractions.
Yeah, I get it.
Like especially in a formal setting like the IELTS.
It feels too informal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Maria actually encourages using those contractions.
Oh, really?
She says it shows fluency.
Okay.
It shows that you're comfortable with the natural flow of spoken English.
So it's more about sounding natural than like super proper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it shows the examiner that you're not just reciting memorized words, you're actually thinking in English.
Thinking in English.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's a good thing.
Okay, but I'm thinking that takes a lot of practice.
It does.
To know, like...
when to link and when not to link.
Right. I don't want to sound like I'm mumbling.
No, you don't want to sound like you're mumbling, but you also don't want to sound robotic.
Right. So it's a balance.
It's finding that balance, yeah.
So you've got to practice this.
Definitely.
With active listening and shadowing.
Yeah, those are really good tools for that.
Okay, good. And then Maria's last tip.
Oh, yeah.
Might seem a little bit counterintuitive.
It does a little bit.
especially if you're nervous about the test.
Yeah.
She says, slow down.
Slow down.
I would think speaking quickly shows fluency.
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
But if you speak too quickly, your words are going to get jumbled together.
And then it's hard to understand you.
Exactly. You lose that clarity.
Right.
And Maria points out that speaking a little bit slower gives you time to pronounce each word correctly.
And it also shows the examiner that you're in control.
Exactly. It shows confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not about rushing through it.
No.
It's about taking your time.
Taking your time.
Making sure you're pronouncing everything clearly.
Yeah. And it's not just for the IELTS, you know?
Right.
Slowing down can help in any situation.
Any speaking situation.
Any speaking situation, yeah.
Good point. It's funny because we always think about like accent reduction and clarity when we're thinking about the IELTS.
Yeah.
Or like job interviews and stuff like that.
High pressure situations.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's important for everyday conversations too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like think about it. How frustrating is it when you can't get your point across?
Oh, it's the worst.
Because of a communication breakdown.
The worst.
Yeah. So wouldn't it be amazing to have that confidence?
Yeah.
To know that you can be understood?
That you're being understood. Yeah.
No matter who you're talking to.
It's like a superpower.
So even if someone's not prepping for the IELTS, but they still want to work on this stuff.
Absolutely.
What can they do?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be a huge commitment. Just think about little ways you can incorporate these tips into your daily life.
Okay.
So, you know, like listen to a BBC podcast while you're commuting or while you're doing chores around the house. Or, you know, challenge yourself to a 5-minute tongue twister session before bed.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just little things like that.
So, and just to reiterate, the goal is not to erase your accent.
No.
Your accent's a part of you.
It's part of you. It's part of your story.
Right. Maria's emphasizing the importance of clarity for effective communication.
For communication. Yeah.
So it's about making sure your message is being understood.
Exactly. You can keep your unique voice.
Right.
But just make sure that people can understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think focusing on clarity can also be a kindness to ourselves.
Oh, like that.
Right,
Yeah.
because it takes the pressure off of trying to sound perfect.
Trying to be perfect, yeah.
And it lets us just focus on expressing ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So much better.
So to kind of wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with a question.
Okay.
How can you use these tips in your life? Not to sound perfect, but just for the joy of communicating clearly.
Yes.
And confidently.
I love that.
Because your voice matters.
It does.
And the more clearly you can express yourself, the more impact you're going to have.
A bigger impact
on the world around you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So until next time, keep exploring.
Keep practicing.
Keep practicing. And keep sharing your voice.
Share your voice with the world.
With the world.